Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Owen Benjamin. What's up, brother?
Welcome to Liberty Lockdown. Please scan your barcode. Your liberty ain't gone, but yeah, it's on hold. Where did it come from and where did it go?
How are you, man? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a long time. For those that don't know, I do a comedy show, and I've had Owen on there a few times, and he and I have had some kerfuffles, as they might say. But it's been all, as far as I'm concerned, it's been all love. So, anyways, thank you so much for coming on, dude.
No, totally. I'm all about people's intention and their heart, and I don't care. I assume I'm not going to agree with people on stuff. I don't agree with myself sometimes from earlier in the week. You know, exactly. I was just telling you before we started that this is a good day for me to do this stream because I'm feeling a little softened up about some of the things that I've been really intense about in the past.
Yeah. Well, I mean, before we get into that, I just want to get your knee-jerk reaction. You may not even have heard this yet, but there was a plea deal that came to, and Julian Assange has just been freed from Belmarsh prison after 5 years in jail. Just curious if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, they should have been freed, years ago. It was crazy.
Yeah,
I'm very happy for him. I mean, I'm a big Roger Waters fan, and the only reason I even really knew about Julian Assange was just Pink Floyd keeping that fire hot. So. Yeah, I think his punishment was insane. So I'm glad he's freed. But see, again, does Biden get credit? Like, is that a Biden thing now?
Yeah, I certainly think that there's some political angles on this that make sense. Number one, RFK Jr. is chewing up a lot of Biden's support, and he has been very vocal about being prepared to pardon Assange as well as Snowden, build statues. He's going way over the top. So I think that this takes a lot of sail out of RFK's, sales. But I think that the thing that I wanted to talk about briefly is just the impact that it had on me. I was a very young man when Collateral Murder, the video that he released in 2009 that showed the journalists in, I believe it was Iraq, that were being hit by that, I don't know if it's A1C gunner or whatever it was, very, very graphic. I won't play it because I don't think I can put it on YouTube, but there's these eight innocent people that are taken out by American soldiers. And it was, first off, it was very impactful on me, but secondarily, I watched it today for the first time in many, many years. And what struck me about it was I didn't have even 1/10 the emotion that I had when I had first seen it. And it really demonstrated to me how calloused I've become to, really gratuitous violence in the form of war footage and things like that. And I don't know if I have much more to say to it other than, how dangerous that might be, that constantly having that in your feed and being inundated with the death and destruction of people all over the world, it takes a toll.
Bro, it's such a good observation because that happened to me when I stopped watching pornography. I realized how unbelievably vulgar the world was. And maybe for those of you listening, I have gone through phases where I might have come across as holier than thou or whatever. Unless you've gone through it, it's really shocking when you look at billboards, what's presented to kids, all that stuff, when you're not numb to it. And the same thing, like what you just brought up, is so similar when it comes to violence, drone strikes, dead kids. That's why I don't ever repost or post anything about the Gaza atrocities or anything, because I understand why people say they should see what's going on so they're aware. But what I see is numbing down, exactly what you just described, where, when I was back in the day, when I'd watch a ton of pornography, I wouldn't even see it. Like you'd have a billboard with like a naked chick on it next to an elementary school, and I literally wouldn't see anything there.
Right.
It's like the They Live goggles. And so I'm trying to desensitize. I've been trying to resensitize myself for a long time. And yeah, I think that's a major, major thing about what sometimes Twitter feeds are just dead kids, blowing up kids, horror, drone strikes, blowing up people. And I'm like, this to me is a problem regardless of someone's political views.
I agree. It made me reflect too on the fact that I had just shared maybe 48 hours ago, which I do the same thing. I very rarely share war footage, even though I'm very anti-war and I talk about the wars a lot, but I try not to share the footage. But I did 2 days ago, and it was this drone that I think it was a Russian soldier who had essentially given up, and it looked like he had been running for God knows how long. And he turns towards the drone and he kind of like pleads with the drone operator not to sick it on him.
Sad,
And
man.
yeah, and then he dives at the last second and just, last ditch effort to try and keep himself alive. Doesn't look like he succeeds, but it was horrific. And I shared it and it went pretty viral. And that's the intention with what I'm doing, is that I want people to see it. I want there to be an impact. I want people to realize the horrific nature that is war, particularly the proxy nature of the Ukraine war with Russia. But at the same time, you really have to like keep in mind what you're doing to people too, with
Exactly,
putting that in
dude.
their feed. It's very tough how to balance it. I don't know what the right answer is, I guess I'm saying.
Dude, I used to do it with because I was very emotional and angry about the trans kid thing 7-8 years ago. And I would share all of it and like show it to people. I remember this Desmond is great or something. Is this
Yep.
little kid.
Yep.
And I'd show it and be like, look at this. And I realized that I was sharing what I hate. It's like, it's one thing to have people become aware of it, but what it would do is it almost made people jaded, where they're like, oh, another tranny kid. Oh yeah, tranny kids. And you're like, so now you're used to it. It doesn't even have the shock it once did.
Right.
And so that's why I got a lot more into just trying to promote what I like versus what I hate, because I saw that it would just make people numb to it, myself included.
Yeah. It's such a tough balance, because I feel like at the same time, there's so many people that are genuinely oblivious to what's happening in Ukraine and in Gaza for that matter. And it's like, I want there to be awareness. I want people to understand. I want people to oppose it so that hopefully it can bring it to an end. But at the same time, like what you're talking about, there's a contagion effect that is ultimately making more and more kids feel as if this is something that they might consider. It's like, whether you're sharing it positively or negatively, there's still a contagion effect of like, oh, this is a very common thing. There are tons of 8-year-olds that do this. And it's like, well, that's not really true, I would imagine. I'm sure it's still
exactly.
very rare. So you got to, I don't know. It's all about balance. Anyways, what state do you live in? Or I assume
Idaho.
Idaho.
Yeah.
Man, what a beautiful property.
I have a farm stand. That's why people are like, I'm going to dox you. I'm like, are you going to buy eggs? Like I literally sell produce at my house like every day. I mean, I'm not into being doxxed. Like, I'm not into scary people on the internet, but it's like, I'm basically living in the 1980s. It's like I'm living in like with like phone books where you look up where someone is, you stop by, you say hello. I'm trying to give my kids a more innocent childhood, because that's all I can do. I've went down these roads, and I like lately I've been feuding with people on Twitter. Like, all these guys are saying I'm like Jewish and a shill, and
Right.
why not, look into this stuff? Because I'm now becoming the guy that's saying, who cares? Because I already did all of it and nothing really happens. Like, all we can do is like build our families, be productive, be grateful, educate people to not fight these wars, like educate people how to, like Ukraine, for example. Like, I have a friend who lost his uncle and his cousin already in Ukraine. He's Ukrainian, like, and a lot of, the fall of the whole system with the crime that's happening there, and just it's like hell on earth. And so, and I have this platform, and so I'm always like trying to like do the best good I can, but all that really works is just don't get out of debt. Because, okay, why does someone join the military? Because they're economically pressured with debt, or they think it's like saving America. So you can explain it to them and explain how it's what the grab word debt wars are and all that. But I'm just trying to not, shock people into thinking we live in an ugly world.
Yeah. Well, I think probably the most beautiful thing you can do is give your child a beautiful childhood. Like, I think that heals the planet more than anything, and particularly if you have a large family, which I know you do. I think that's just such a beautiful thing, because I was very blessed to have despite the fact that it was a broken home and, blah, 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 I'll set all the negatives aside. I had a very secure, middle class, just nice childhood and very safe place. I didn't have to fear for anything really. And I I think it puts you on a great foundation. And I think that more than anything I'll probably ever tweet, is what you actually pass down to the next generation. I'm so appreciative to my parents that they gave that to me, and I hope to do it, in my own personal life. And I think that's the one thing that I've wanted to talk to you about for the longest time, is that you oftentimes will like give the libertarian shit, saying like, I live the free life that you talk. And it's like, I agree, but shouldn't that be a point of, crossover and connection with one another? Because I agree with you. I think that you do live a very like libertarian, kind of off the grid, Thomas Massey-esque lifestyle. But it seems to have been a point of like,
yeah, I'm working on that. Everybody's experienced it, where you're in a defensive mode from social media or from being canceled or people saying you're crazy. So what happens to me, like some of my most and it's my fault. I'm taking full accountability. I'm not saying people are making me act a certain way, because I don't believe in casting blame like that. Just hopefully people can better understand me.
Sure.
Is a lot of times I'm responding from like, you ran away to the country. You're putting your head in the sand because you're not even political. Like, we're out here fighting. We're in the city holding lines. Like, none of what you do doesn't matter. Everyone can't have your money to plant seeds in dirt, And so sometimes I'm getting all riled up, and I'm like responding to that. I'm like, no, like our founding fathers were all farmers. Like even Carter is from a farm. Clinton was partially from a farm. Like Reagan, Bush, the American freedom ideal, and our culture is so rural, with the guns and the farming and the apple pie and the baseball, and all of it is very field of dreams. And so I'm doing my best to do that. And so you're right. I should have a lot more in common with a lot of libertarians. And I'm looking to do that, because I don't want to be reactionary, but it's just the amount of them that act like I'm somehow lost my mind, or I, cancel. Like, I don't know. There's some shame involved in what I'm doing, is why I have been kind of a dick in the past, where I'm just like, especially with some of the ones that I know me. I'm like, what I'm doing. I'm not crazy. I didn't eat a pot brownie 7 years ago and ran into a cabin. Like, I have 4 kids. We grow our own food. We homeschool. Like, I teach them about gold and silver. I'm like, we have like local communities. I've made our own social media that revolves around positive, good, true, beautiful American aspects. And so I'm like, part of me, I guess the vanity in me was like, I should get some freaking respect from these people. And when not only I didn't get respect, I got ostracized. I'm like, I just get hostile. But you're right. It's like there's no reason for me to be so hostile. I'm really trying to work on that.
Well, in fairness, I think if you're receiving hostility, directing or responding to that hostility with hostility, I respect and appreciate that. I'm just saying, like, I think that the overlap ought to be appreciated on both sides. I'm not lecturing you. I'm saying on both sides, like and your point about how the founders were all farmers, and how basically this whole country was all about farming until the 1900s. I think that really does kind of lay the groundwork, or the foundation by which you can have a free civilization, because it builds self-responsibility, reliability, like you rely on yourself, all things that we really don't have anymore. Like we're so codependent and interdependent with one another. But like the farmer could actually keep his entire family alive without the government, without any assistance, all year round, and that's just not what we have anymore. And I think as a byproduct of that, people have voted for a government to increase in size. And it's sad, because I don't think we're going to go back fully to a agrarian society, certainly not with 300 plus million people. But for those that can do it, I think it's a huge benefit. Today's episode of Liberty Lockdown is brought to you by our friends over at Crowd Health. Health insurance is painfully confusing. It also costs a boatload. You usually don't even get the services that you want. It's a total pain in the rear. So stop sending money to big insurance companies who profit off of not paying your bills, and check out Crowd Health. Health insurance processes can be confusing, but there is a better way, and Crowd Health is that way. For just $175 for an individual or $575 for a family of 4 or more, you'll get access to a community of people who are willing to help out in the event of an emergency. You'll get access to telemedicine visits, discounted prescriptions, and so much more without doctors' networks getting in the way. And of course, you'll join the crowd, a group of members just like you who want to help pay for each other's unexpected medical events. Let Crowd Health help with your healthcare needs. Get started today for just $99 per month for your first 3 months by using the code LOCKDOWN at joincrowdhealth.com. Crowd Health is not insurance. Learn more at joincrowdhealth.com. That's joincrowdhealth.com, code LOCKDOWN.
Yeah, but even if it isn't agrarian, like for example, like people talk about the Federal Reserve a lot, and I've looked into that a lot, fiat currency, world reserve currency, all that stuff. And these are the conversations that I would like the Dave Smiths of the world. I would push at them to try and get this conversation happening. And you know, I can be too mean, I can be too aggressive, but in my culture growing up, that's how you kind of get a man to fight you, but the fight is for the benefit of people. Because what I would say is, right now, like before we have, because I see the same thing with these like Nazi LARPy guys, where they can't even start having a family until the Jays are gone, and we do, you know, they find a racially pure woman. I'm like,
right.
It's. Did I just lose you?
Yeah. It's
okay.
It's back.
Okay. The standard, I think people will hide behind. So the Federal Reserve, people are like, we have to get rid of the Fed. Well, that's not happening. So like, what's the best thing we can do now is local economies, because the main benefit we get from fiat world reserve currency is cheap labor from China, a bunch of goods from, you know, Central America and Africa. Like you can trace an avocado on avocado toast to like cartels, you know? And so that system, if we just get more local, whether it's leather belts or whatever someone makes, you know, whether you're building houses, you could start a timber business where you just, you make wooden planks and you mill them yourself. Like I know guys up here that do that. That's how you get off the Federal Reserve now. And then, because if our economy does crash with the dollar, it'll be foreign goods, foreign labor that will be the most affected. And so if you work on it now locally, you will actually prosper and benefit from it. And it takes power away from the Fed now. And all these wars are just gang wars. It's like, you know, petrodollar. It's like we get off the gold standard. So Kissinger has this great idea with Saudi Arabia. You sell oil only in dollars, and that'll create a demand for dollars forever. They don't want to do it. So we got this young upstart country, Israel. So we give them a bunch of weapons. It really is. Yep. And so they fight Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia now needs our weapons. So they buy our weapons, and now they have to sign the petrodollar. And so now Israel is our best friend because they're just annoying, and like they're just trying to fight everybody so that they sell oil in dollars. It's not even about the oil, it's about the dollars, because we could pump our own oil, but we want everyone to use our currency so that we can inflate it and rule the world. And so, you know, I always want to explain this stuff to people, but then they say I'm crazy, and so then I can be aggressive, and I'm trying not to be aggressive.
Well, I think, you know, RFK Jr. has gotten some flack for saying that Israel's our aircraft carrier in the Middle East. I think it's more aptly described as Israel's our pit bull in the Middle East.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, dude, it's the same with what we're doing in Ukraine. It's like, we're using them. It's like, okay, we have an issue with Russia because Russia they're not in debt. We like their resources. They're not a slave to the IMF, but we're not going to directly fight them. So you guys, you have special blood, you know? And so it really is. And then we get really into it. We're like, oh yeah, everything for Ukraine. And now we're circling the money with this pump, and it's the same with Israel. It's like Israel is our greatest ally is a very cynical but somewhat valid thing. It's cynical as hell, though. It's not like it's this twisted relationship that just keeps the dollar afloat. And I'm like, America's got so many resources, so many good people, hard workers. It's like, we don't even need world reserve currency. We don't need Guatemalan beans for $1. Like, let's start growing it ourselves, making it ourselves. And then people are like, you've lost your mind. And I'm like, fuck you. And then I prove them right.
Yeah. Well, look, I agree with you that becoming more not just self-reliant, but also just reliant on our local community would be a
Yeah.
huge benefit and a great kind of preventative measure to what I think is inevitable, unfortunately. And just to go back to the war in Ukraine for the audience's sake, which I'm sure since most of them listen to me, they all will probably already know this, but Vladimir Putin is actually the kind of the responsible party, the brainchild behind the BRICS alliance and the creation of the BRICS currency to ultimately defang and undermine the petrodollar and the US dollar as the global reserve currency. And I think more than anything, by far, more than anything, that's the reason that he's on the chopping block. That's the reason that this war is happening, is that he has decided that, okay, you guys won't play nice with me, so now we're going to create a bipolar world. And they're like, well, that ain't happening, because if that happens, that means that the US dollar, all of the dollars that are overseas come flooding home. I think, anyways, long story short.
You know about that too, about how there's so many debts in dollars right now that when it starts rolling over, when it starts just inevitably going, I mean, things could get wacky out there, and what you're saying is right. I mean, Vladimir Putin's like, these guys are sick of being told what to do based on sanctions, economic warfare, all this stuff. And they're not in debt. They're not, they have plenty of resources and they're just going to keep going.
Well, it got really serious when they took $300 billion of their central bank assets out of European banks, and they just took it. And they're like, hey, we're now going to give this money to Ukraine, the nation that you are at war with actively. We're going to take your money and we're going to fund and arm them with your money. Like, it's so over the top aggressive, and yet we're still pretending as if we are not a co-belligerent in this war, if not the primary belligerent in this war. Not just we, not America, but like NATO, the West broadly.
The dollar, right?
Yeah, and do you think that that there's an off ramp? Like, because I'm just being totally honest, I'm becoming more and more convinced that the West is dedicated to this path, and they have no interest in avoiding a hot war with Russia.
Yeah, I think our war could be with Mexico too. It's like I don't think America would like. I think that even the neocons are afraid of Russia. I think that that's why they're juiced up with Ukraine. I think they were afraid of OPEC. They don't like a unified Middle East. That scares them. They might be able to go after Iraq or Afghanistan or Syria, but like if there's any coherence, that's why Israel's our greatest ally. And so, yeah, I mean, the off-ramp, I could see it go in 1,000 ways, but my life has been a microcosm, a little of that, where they took my PayPal and they took my money. There's a type of person that breaks and cucks at that point where they say whatever you want. And then there's a type of person that is like, I can no longer trust you and I have to seek other options.
Right.
And that's me. And I don't know if it comes from...
You're Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, like Putin. Yeah, it's like where it's like... maybe it's an upbringing thing. Maybe it's cold weather. I mean, I used to joke that where I'm from is like the Siberia of America, where it's freezing cold. Everyone's broke. Everyone's drunk. It's despair everywhere. Like we had our economic collapse in central New York in like 1850. It's like, I joked at my parents' house right now, BlackRock won't buy it. It's like 90 grand. And it's not even a bad house. BlackRock is like, we don't want to buy the world, And so it's true. And so I know what that feels like when you're like, you guys aren't going to have a net. If you're going to steal my money and you're going to gaslight me and you're going to try and like, I won't let the boot be on my neck, even if it means like, poverty or serious ramifications, because if you let a bully do that, you're basically gone anyway. Like you don't have a country, you don't have a way of life. And, Russia has scars from World War II. People think D-Day is a thing. It's like you look at the Eastern Front with the Russian losses are unimaginable. Like the stuff that they've been through, they're like, we can't go through it. And then, with Yeltsin and all that, they know what it's like being broken up and sold off for pennies and the betrayal and what happens there. And they're just like, dude, we're not going to do it. We're calling your bluff. And I think America might fight Mexico.
Yeah, well, I think if Trump gets back in there, that becomes more likely. That's how the military-industrial complex gets fed. But yeah, I'm I'm nervous that there isn't an off ramp on the Russia Ukraine situation, just simply because if Russia wins at this point, after we've thrown hundreds of billions at it and stolen their money and done everything else, it's like, well, then the global world order, our capacity to just browbeat anybody into submission kind of gets proven. I mean, it already kind of got proven in Afghanistan. It kind of got proven in Syria. It kind of got proven in Iraq. But like, if we throw all this at Russia and we come up short, I think it signals to the world like, oh yeah, BRICS alliance is here to stay, and ultimately the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency dies. So I don't know. I'm nervous that
these are some smart, like the dollar wizards are you never want to, because like logically that makes perfect sense, but they got stuff up their sleeve. Like look at COVID, look at LGBT kids. It's like they know what they're doing, and they know how to keep this thing moving. And if you look at old currencies like the Spanish currency or the French currency or the pound, like hundreds of years, even after the empire falls, people still use it, but it just doesn't have the same kick. And I think we're experiencing it right now, where you're getting mass migration, decadence, lower buying power, confusion, corruption. It's kind of like that's actually what I think the result is. I don't think it's going to be a grand military situation.
It's feeling a little Weimar-y. Do you think that the cultural decay is like, because you know how the pendulum swings, right? And we've gone to real sexual perversion, so much so that children are now very much being indoctrinated into this type of stuff. And now you're starting to see, and in fact, you and our mutual friend Top Lobster have been going to war with some of these guys. You've seen the inverse of that pendulum swing, which is kind of this Nazi hard right movement that they're
perverts too, though. Yeah, it's like that's the thing. It's all about victim consciousness, or like good. That's why we say the good, the true, the beautiful. It's like the pendulum swinging in the pit. The hard right swing isn't even better if it's victim people.
This was an absolutely fantastic conversation with Owen Benjamin. Unfortunately, we went about 90 minutes, and the last hour of that 90 minutes was talking about stuff that you can't do on this platform. So the remainder of it will be on the other platforms, audio, every other platform, but it won't be here. I apologize, but please, if you did enjoy this portion, I promise you will love the rest. Go check that out, and make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, share it around, and thank you guys, as always, for tuning in.
Welcome to Liberty Lockdown. Please scan your barcode. Your liberty ain't gone, but yeah, it's on hold. Where did it come from and where did it go?